All right. Welcome to the discussion session of Tuesday, November 28th. Sorry, we're a little late. First on the agenda, review of the commission agenda for tonight. Manager McGill, go through that, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's agenda, we have a public hearing on an ordinance amending the 2023 budget for revenue and expenditures not anticipated as part of that budget. This is an ordinance we do every year. These items are approved by the commission throughout the year. And then we go through by ordinance to amend our budget so that everything agrees with what was approved. We also have a public hearing on an ordinance establishing a fee for the collection of garbage and real estate tax ordinance. Since there's a correlation between the proposed fee and the real estate village, this hearing covers both items. We have a public hearing on an ordinance amending the stormwater fee billing and collection procedures. It will essentially change the stormwater to an annual billing and establishes February 1st as the billing date. And it will also align with the billing and collection for the garbage fee. We have the introduction of an ordinance establishing compensation for employees for 2024. We also have the consideration of a resolution authorizing submission of a grant application to the local share fund for the fire training facility. These funds are provided through the Commonwealth Finance Authority, and they are actually the gaming revenues that are generated. We have the introduction and setting of a public hearing for the 2023 comprehensive plan. We have consideration of an appointment to the Hospital Authority Board. And finally, consideration to ratify approval of a temporary subsurface heating system at the ice rink that's related to the repairs that we are making and the temporary chiller that is currently operating at.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, and sorry you folks got bumped from last meeting, so thank you for coming up today. 2023 capital projects on the books at Gateway.
Thanks for having us back and thanks for a little more time. Got some talkers with me. It's one of them, you know. So we all come to you in various forms throughout the year, but in discussions with Keith, we thought it might be a good idea just kind of recap the year in infrastructure. We do a lot of projects and we don't really summarize them all in one fell swoop. So tonight, we're going to give you that presentation. We walked through it this afternoon again, and I think we'll probably take about 30 to 35 minutes to get through everything in a comfortable pace. If you have any questions, please jump in and ask us.
Do you do this annually? I can't remember.
No, not really in a summary form.
Okay, so this is the first time that we
Yeah,
see it. I like
just
it. I
kind of
appreciate
package
it.
everything together.
Yeah, thanks.
I also thought it would be beneficial for our commissioner-elect.
Sure.
The general background.
That guy over there.
Yes.
So we've just broken it down into some different categories. Matt's going to take us with roads. Josh will talk about sanitary and storm sewers. I'm going to pitch in on some of the parks and building projects. And then we have a couple environmental projects we'd like to highlight and then talk about asset management. So with that, Matt, you want to start us off on the roads?
All right, thank you, Dan, and good evening, Commission. So obviously, one of the bigger expenditures each year is the roads, both the reconstruction and the mill and overlay program. So we thought it'd be good to just highlight some of the work that was done this past year, as Dan mentioned. And with that being said, this year's road program encompassed 10 roadways. We did drainage work on 9 of them. It was just over $2 million for those roadways. So if you equate that to a per mile cost, it's about, because we did about just over 3/4 of a mile. So the per mile cost is about 2.6 million per mile. With that being said, I'll contrast that with some of the mill and overlay here in just a minute. But as you can see from the photos that are on the slide, the bottom left is kind of a road that's going to be considered for reconstruction. The middle, just kind of showing those different stages, because I think oftentimes in your package you see kind of the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of construction on the schedule as it comes out, as work takes place. So obviously the first picture is one of a road being considered. The middle picture is one where drainage improvements are being made. That's a picture of just some roof drains being captured to eliminate icing issues that might develop. The third photo on the bottom right is one of new curbs being installed. On the next slide, we have on the left is the excavation where we're digging down to the subgrade, the soil. The middle picture is that of the geotextile and stone going in, and then lastly on the bottom right is that of the final pavement. So that's just kind of a snapshot of what that road program is, and obviously, as I said, it's one of the biggest expenditures each year. So contrasting that with the next slide on the mill and overlay program. The mill and overlay program, Josh is ahead of me there. That was about 440,000. We did 8 roadways. We did correct some icing issues. We did work on just shy of 1.4 miles of roadway. So if you look at the cost there, it's about 325,000 per mile. So if you're looking at reconstruction versus mill and overlay, it's about an 8-to-1 ratio. So obviously, once we get roads in a position where they have a good base, they have the drainage, they have the curbs, all of those things, the maintenance of them moving forward is about an 1/8 of the cost with the mill and overlay. So that being said,
How many times can you mill and overlay before you have to replace the whole thing?
so we found, well, to this
What's the
day,
Yeah.
so the first road that was ever reconstructed is 1980. And so that at that point, it's been 43 years since that, and it's still there. The only thing we've done is mill and overlay it since. Twice. So it's gone through, and usually we find that it's about like that 20 to 25 year window is when we do it the first time, and it's about the same the second time. So, and at this point, it's still holding strong, and there hasn't been a sign of, even when we mill and overlay it, the base is still, it didn't have signs of soft spots. It didn't have
Right.
signs
Sure.
of further deterioration that required work into the base. So, to that point, we know we're good at least that 50 years. And our thought is that as long as we just keep milling and overlaying and doing that maintenance, we should be good on those roadways.
For 50 years.
Or more.
And more.
Or more.
Yeah, or more.
Slight tangent on that topic though, but as the utility comes in and tears it up, does that change the kind of long-term viability? Would that change your assessment?
No, because that leads into the next slide here. So, on the utility work, and I'll bear with me 1 second, I'll answer your question here.
Yeah.
So we did have a little bit of a benefit in the past year, and actually you'll see on the next slide over the last 6 years or so, the utility companies have been doing a lot of work, as we're all aware. Last year it was in the tune of about 2.7 miles of road work. That didn't cost us anything other than the inconvenience of them working in and around the town and the roads being tore up, but they did mill and pave the roads afterwards. Now, what we always do, and Public Works and I, if a road is a full depth road, they're required to put that full section back in when they finish their work. If it's a road that is a asphalt over concrete or something like that, they put just a wearing, they do the surface material afterwards. They don't reconstruct it because
They don't
it
need
wasn't
to,
full-
they can
yeah.
go into the base.
Correct, and especially if it's a road that we're considering paving in the future, which goes on to nope, I'm sorry. Forget that one for a second, but in a minute, we'll talk about the planning about how we try and work with the utility companies for the roads that they're gonna do. So we mirror that with our programs moving forward, because we don't want to have a situation where we just pave a road or reconstruct a road and they come in the
And
next
dig it up.
year. It's not, obviously, we can't control their schedules. We try and coordinate as best as possible, but it's not fail proof, but it is what we attempt to do moving
If
forward.
they dig up for a gas line and we also have icing problems on that road because of the, downspout,
drains.
roof drains. Do we have a chance to go in and fix before they mill and overlay?
We would consider that
Yeah.
with our work, yes. And there's a separate storm, and Josh will touch on in a minute.
Okay.
There's a separate storm contract, blanket contract that we have that can add stormwater work as we see fit.
But then you get to Commissioner Flynn's original question, utility work, yeah, the bituminous that we put back in is so thick. When they replace it in kind full depth, we feel that it's equal to what was there before. And then they come and mill and overlay and they seal everything on the top of that. So we've not seen any detrimental effect, plus the fact that they have to use 100% stone in their trenches too when they're under the road. So you're actually, you get something substantial back.
Uh-huh. I think they do a pretty good job.
So this slide here just kind of gives this is inclusive of 2013, so it's really 11-year kind of snapshot. So there's about 16 miles of mill and overlay over that period of time. Reconstruction's just over 12 miles. The utility work from 2019 to current is about 13 miles. So if you add it all up per year, it's about 5.25 miles per year, or 6% of the system that has been worked on recently in this time frame. So going to the next slide, what you'll see is that 6% of the system being worked on, and this is a snapshot of the Street Saver program where we catalog all of the work that's being done on the roads. And you'll see that PCI is held kind of steady at 79 over the last 3 years. So if you're looking for that status quo, it's about that 6% that we've been seeing over the last few years. Now, keep in mind, some of that 2.5 miles plus was done by the utility companies, but that's that kind of status quo equilibrium state. The next couple slides here are just giving some of the statistics. So you'll see the different roadway types and the breakdown between excellent, acceptable, marginal, and failed in each of those different roadway types, from brick all the way to full depth asphalt. The next slide shows the miles of road in each category. So for instance, the full depth is that 48.56 miles. That's the number inside of the table there. And then the top number, the 84.55, would be the average PCI of those full depth streets. And then you'll see it ranges from the 84 down to 58, which is the brick streets. And that's the 9.85 miles of brick street that we've discussed.
I think it's really interesting to see that over half of the street system is full depth reconstructed. Now, that was started 43 years ago. Think about that. And in that time, we've gotten more than half of the roads rebuilt in the community. I think that's a testament to the commission holding the program every year, always funding the program, because we're going to flip the switch here pretty soon where we do more mill and overlay, as Matt was talking about. And we won't be reconstructing things, at a certain point in time. So that's the idea of keeping your roads in good shape, is, rebuild the ones that are bad. And really a lot of the older roads didn't have any substantial base, no drainage, and all the things that we've been doing in the current plan.
What's our ordinance say that we want our average PCI to go no lower than
The current ordinance, I believe, is 60.
60? Okay, so right now our brick streets are averaging below 60, but the rest of them, obviously, in the total overall PCI is not.
On the whole, the total system is about 79.
Yeah,
correct.
79, that makes sense. But that is noteworthy to me that on average, our brick streets fail what our ordinance says when we pull them out. So I would look at that and say, well, that's where we need to put the most attention. That's where we need to put the next
Right.
most funding over the next
Mhm.
5 to 10 years. That's what's failing.
Then the next slide is kind of a snapshot between 2013 and 2023. So where were we in 2013? Where are we in 2023? In response to a request from Commissioner Grella, we did provide a table that I believe Manager McGill had forwarded to the commission, kind of showing the two different what streets were in that fail category in 13 and which ones are in 2023.
And
just
fail is below what number again?
That was the 44, I believe.
44, okay.
44 and lower.
And then the marginal, sorry.
Marginal was 45 to 59,
Okay,
acceptable.
59. So below 60 is
Below
marginal.
60 is marginal,
Awesome,
yes.
thanks. Perfect.
Commissioner Grillo, since that was your question, we're at that point in presentation, did you have any questions?
No.
No, not yet. I'm still just looking through the list that they gave and I'm just cross-referencing to see which ones were on the list, 2023 and 2013, because the lists were a little bit different in terms of named, so I had to split out columns and stuff like that and match them up. I'm just trying to figure out which, if any, were failed in 2013 and which, if any, are still failed in 2023. And then we could have a conversation about, you know,
I see.
why.
And of that list, and I'm sure you realized or saw that, of the list of the streets in 2013 that were on the failed, there was 60 plus segments, 65, 68, something along that line, and 52, 53 of them have been corrected. So it's not,
100%.
they haven't all been done, but there has been a large portion, or the majority have been worked on. Showing.
Maybe 12 or 13.
And some of them are very short, and I don't wanna diverge. I know we have a lot to get through, so I don't wanna.
That was a question he had. so-
I understand. The next slide, speaks back to the utility work, so we do try and coordinate with the utilities each year. Along those lines, Mapleton, we know that, Peoples had done work on Mapleton. They've committed to, there was a reduced restoration for their work, which then they provided compensation to the municipality in an effort for us to do that street, because that was on the list of a street that for consideration in the future. So they provided funding to help offset our costs moving forward for less restoration that they had to do, similar to Oregon Trail. There was a contribution there from Columbia, and then we have the water plan from for 2024 that we got from Pennsylvania American here recently. So in addition to the mill and overlay and reconstruction, which are two larger expenditures, there are a few other expenditures in maintenance that we do. Crack sealing, we did about 5.5 miles worth of streets this year on crack sealing. Same with Rejuvenator. That is also about a little over 5.3 miles of work that was done. And both of those are to try and extend the life of the roadways.
When we go to reconstruct a street, just, we say, look, this is time for us to do a full depth reconstruction. Do we go to the utilities? I assume we do.
We do.
And say, this is coming. Where are you? Do you need anything? And if you need it, will you contribute?
And we've even given some look aheads, like 5-year look aheads and things like
Yeah.
that to the utility companies, letting them know, hey, these are streets that we're considering in the future.
Okay.
And sometimes it works in their
Is that
budget
what
and
prompts them to contribute sometimes.
sometimes, yes.
Okay.
We definitely did that on Moreland, and I know that all the street names escape me right now, but I know we had some contribution from Moreland, and we worked with them on that one, similar to these Oregon Trail and Mapleton and others.
As I recall, there's been times where the street was delayed because it was about to be on the list, utilities could hit it. Later, if needed.
Correct, yes. Next, we have the other maintenance programs that we do on a yearly basis that are funded. There's the curb maintenance. That's one that really, other than us putting the contract together, that's a contract that's solely managed by Public Works and staff there, and that's in preparation for the mill and overlay program. So any curb work on the mill and overlay program that needs done, they'll address that. This year, the commission had added into the reconstruction contract through change order, the library sidewalk maintenance work that was completed in a timely manner there. The next slide represents the brick maintenance. Once again, this is another contract that we had put together and bid, but it's administered by Public Works. They have a tool in GIS where they have all the brick streets, and every section of work that is done, repaired, they have the date, who did it, cost, number of slabs, all those types of things are tracked in GIS each year. And that's done solely on the Public Works side of things. Similarly, the sidewalk maintenance contracts, there's the root damage and the assessment. These, as was the Brick Street work, are run by Public Works. Other than us putting the contracts out, they keep track of it in GIS, which once again, it just shows how powerful tool the GIS system is to keep track of all of these different contracts and what's done and when it was done and all those things.
Next, so moving on to the component of sort of traffic improvements and road improvements, there were a couple projects that were completed this year. Bar Hill Road and Sigler improvements, we got a right turn lane, some ADA improvements, some signal modifications. This was partially funded by an Arley grant, which is the PennDOT, or the state of Pennsylvania funding for automated red light money collected through tickets. And we were able to get this project done. It is complete. The second project that went through a long process and was ultimately built was Yardman Road traffic calming plan. There were geometric modifications made, some speed humps, pedestrian islands, a traffic circle. That project was originally bid. It really was authorized a little later in the year. When we put it out for bid, it just had too many different things going on to get people to bid it at that time of year. We were able to get the street reconstruction contractor to do a majority of the items that were already in his bid, and that project is complete. The next project is the Washington Road and Bar Hill improvements. I call this another COVID project where it was started during right at the point where COVID was, and due to some delays on materials and signals and poles and all those things, it's still out there. We're almost complete. This is an addition of a right turn lane on Bar Hill Road, complete traffic signal replacement, 88 ramps on all four corners, and again, this was partially funded by our grant. So next, I'm going to turn it on to Josh for discussion on sewers.
So on the sanitary sewer side of things, I listed out on this slide various statistics of work that has been completed this year. But a high level overview of the program, we take a proactive approach, and each year we televise approximately 10% of the system. We couple that televising with the upcoming road program as well, so that if we do find any repairs we have to take care of, we're able to do that ahead of any type of paving that happens. So as we televise that system, we identify defects, which leads into the next slide. A couple of these pictures show different examples of the various contracts we use to repair defects that are identified. Those contracts include the point repairs, which is your excavation repairs, lining, which we're essentially establishing a new pipe to an existing pipe without having to dig. It's obviously the least invasive and renews the pipe. Manhole rehab, where you're sealing the inside of a manhole. That's actually the second picture from the left. Root treatment, which is a chemical treatment we push through the sewers to reduce the amount of root growth in that sewer. And backwater valve maintenance, which is a courtesy the municipality provides to the residents to inspect backwater valves. The purpose they serve is in the event the flow surcharges in the main line, it prevents the flow from going into the house.
Got it.
Exactly. Many of these contracts are multi-year contracts. The benefit to that is it reduces bidding costs and helps to establish contractor consistency.
One thing interesting to note is, 10% of the system is 15 miles. So every year we have to digest 15 miles of TV tapes. So look at those tapes, assure that where there's defects that they need addressed. There's a lot of coordination between getting repairs done, documenting them, reporting back to the agencies, because ultimately the health department monitors the maintenance program that's done on our sewer system each year. I will say that the commission's commitment to the sanitary sewer system has drastically reduced call outs for public works personnel in the middle of the night. We don't have nearly as many root problems as we used to have. And I mean, it's that slow and steady approach to maintaining your system that is paying dividends. I think we're seeing that in the consent order with some of the numbers that we're seeing with the amount of lining that we're doing to the system to get out the infiltration of water. So I think that's all very beneficial.
And have we learned anything from the flow meters that were installed? I know one of the questions we got from residents when we started discussing, even before the results of the consent order came in, we were talking about I&I and trying to measure that. Have we gotten any usable data from flow meters that we've installed?
Sure. So what we did, I mean, there's multiple types of meters. The commission actually allowed us to use something to do nighttime flow isolation. Where instead of going out and physically opening manholes and taking weir measurements, we installed trackers that actually collected data that we used. So what that's used to actually pinpoint, 80% of your problem is in 20% of your system. So it has allowed us to sort of hone in on those particular areas to do projects. And that's what we have on the bid right now. We're using that data, that's what you authorized us a couple meetings ago to actually go out. We're taking bids in December to do a very large lining project that is a result of that data that we've received. So the actual test will be the post-construction. The data is used to sort of zero you in, you do the project, and then the consent order requires you to do post-construction flow monitoring to determine the results and how effective it was.
Do we have a sense of the split between municipal or public and private in terms of, you said 80% of the problem is in 20% of the line? Is that just considering the public lines, or is part of that 80% of the problem private lines as well?
Yeah, it's considering it sort of zeroes you in on first on your main lines, but then once you're done, then you'll have accurate information to know on the next step. If all your lines are done, then you sort of zero in on your lateral type of issues. Like
Do we have a sense of what that split is currently or not yet? Is what you're saying? Do we know when we might have a better understanding of what that split is?
I would say after we do this project, the big project next year, any post monitoring will give us an idea whether we hit our numbers or where we need to be. Because you have an expected flow per resident. I mean, an average use, you expect. You take out all of the other extraneous water that could get into the
Right.
line.
Now we know.
And then it really gets back to the residential side.
It would be good just to maybe do a follow-up on that after that project's done. Maybe just make a note to try to understand what those numbers are, because that'll give us a good sense of the contributions from the
Right.
private laterals and whether it's a bigger issue than.
Yeah, I just know that anymore, anybody selling their house, everybody's well aware of this. I know when houses turn over, they're getting the laterals done. It's only smart to do, but you're right. I mean, there's certain places that'll still need to do it. Just on.
Regarding the lining, is there any more complaints recently from residents on the odor?
Nothing recently,
Okay,
every
Nothing
now and
else here.
then something
Yeah.
comes up and we get out in front of it with the residents and explain the process. And most of the time, it's a result of a house trap not actually
Yeah.
running water, and that's what the issue is.
okay, but thanks.
The only other thing on the consent order, just to highlight is, if you look at all these programs, which was the Alcosan program to get people to do innovative things to their sewers. We have obtained through grant programs about $1 million for the sanitary sewer system and implemented that through that program. So that's a good thing. We'll continue to work with other municipalities. One thing to note about Mount Lebanon again is we have 17 separate POCs. We're only second to the city of Pittsburgh. What that means is we have 17 places where we go into other municipalities or points of connection.
Thank you.
And
You said POC, I want to make sure everyone
Yeah.
knows what that meant. It's a connection.
And
Thank
we
you.
have to coordinate with 8 other municipalities, so that requires coordination. It will require going into the future. I'm probably doing joint projects together, which make the most sense for both municipalities. We may not be doing work geographically in our community, but we're ultimately affecting the problem, helping deal with the problem. So that's all I have on the consent order. Josh is gonna talk about a little bit about the storm sewer.
Yeah, so on the storm sewer side of things, we follow a very similar program to what we do on the sanitary sewers. And the gist of the televising we do is typically ahead of the road program. And as a result of, the events, after storm events, where we hone in on a project to resolve issues. So, the types of projects we're doing each year are repairs to ice spots, whether that be ahead of a road program or just an ice spot that needs to be repaired. That's a continuous maintenance issue. Resolving defective pipe could be a replacement of that pipe or a lining, helping with flooding issues and pole replacements. real quick, the pictures I show, they show a few different, solutions, whether it's putting new pipe in and replacing the old pipe, or cured in place lining, which is similar to the sanitary, it's the same as the sanitary sewer lining, or slip lining where you're pushing a new pipe through an existing pipe. That doesn't work for every situation. It's dependent on the existing conditions, but it's less invasive than digging.
We continue to be surprised. I mean, the storm sewer system is roughly 75 miles of pipe compared to 150 miles of sanitary sewers. But we continue to be surprised each year by things that we find. That's why the commission's commitment to keeping the storm sewer fund in place and going forward, that I think that's gonna be continued to be very useful to help people. Now we're gonna move on to projects that we did in the parks. Josh is first up with Robertson Park.
Yeah, on Bradfordton Park, we originally went out to bid earlier this year on this project. The budget was around 72,500. We reached out to numerous contractors, approximately 15. When it came time to open bids, the single bid that we received was upwards of almost 3 times the cost if you added in the alternate. So we went back to the drawing board, coordinated with Public Works on the project. And essentially what we ended up doing was building 2 different contracts, one for the topsoil and one for the fencing. And part of the problem was that it wasn't really big enough of a project for contractors to chase, but it wasn't small enough to get your everyday landscape contractors to take care of. It was kind of in the middle, so we broke it up accordingly, and we were able to almost act as a GC to be able to coordinate separate scopes of work. At the end of the day, we were able to bring that in approximately $10,000 under budget. So it was a successful project.
But there's probably engineering management on top of that.
There was extra administrative
Yeah.
costs and inspection costs, just helping it like coordinate schedules and they do this first, then do this, but
But still not 3 times.
Exactly.
Much cheaper. Thanks.
Well, and I think part of the lessons learned in the post-COVID world with contractors is that people have their specialties, they want to stick with them. If you ask them to do other people's work or coordinate other work, they don't want to do it.
Really?
They're that busy. They have enough
Oh.
work. They don't
Want that
want to
extra
manage
hassle,
other
yeah.
people, carry their costs of them,
I see,
and then
yeah.
we're only paying a 10% increase. So we've seen that in a couple places where again, we're gonna continue to evaluate projects and the best way to do them. I mean, if they can be broken down into logical parts that are not, skirt the bidding. I don't want to skirt the bidding issues. We always talk to Phil about that before we make a decision. So. Next up, Matt did some work at the golf course.
Yeah, so building on the work that was done in 2017 initially for cart path expansions, there was 12 additional improvements that were reviewed and with the golf course staff. And we bid that, came in at 119,000. The final construction cost was about 116, so about 3,000 less than in contract value. But the real benefit here was that we were able to work with the contractor, get them in and coordinate schedules, get them in, get them out in 1 week. So it had minimal disruption to play, minimal downtime, minimal inconveniences for those using the course. So I think that was a win for the golf course.
I just threw a slide in on the golf course pavilion. This was a project that we were able to get a bunch of people to do a lot of work in Mount Lebanon to come together to help get this project completed. Did something we threw in there. It's a nice addition to the golf course. And again, just wanted to highlight the people that did help complete that project. The next one is the tennis court renovations. Again, this is more of the stuff where you have specialty contractors doing work. This is the Hartrue court replacement. The Hartrue is the special material that's used on the clay courts. You have specialty contractors that only do that type of work in the irrigation. So we've had to, again, break this project into different components. We really have a difficulty down there trying to get people that mostly work on private projects to come and bid municipal work. They don't want to provide bonds. They don't want to do all the things that we need them to do. Fortunately, the state, on the state contract, the co-stars, they have bid the Hartrue work. We were able to get an estimated budget for that. It's not in line with what, the costs have gone up significantly. But again, we have a plan to go forward. We know that we're on the list to get the work done. And that's most important in terms of these type of projects. Next project is the pickleball court. Fortunately, pickleball was so popular that there were contractors very interested in this. They were willing to coordinate things because they deal with the nets and different things that they do, line striping and everything related to it. So we were able to bid this project, get it in for the under the budget with minimal delays, and it was completed. Through a slide in here on Vibrant Uptown, just to really highlight the significance of the infrastructure related to this project. I know it was not necessarily a fun project for anybody, but I did want to highlight the fact that it still came in under budget. We had great construction drawings. We had no change orders that were required due to document issues. They were only things that we added to the project as necessary. We got through it, and at the end of the day, you look at the numbers in terms of the next slide with the amount of work that was done. I'm not going to read through the numbers, but there was a lot of work done. We're almost there with getting the railing up and some punch list items, and we'll be done with this project.
Can you go back to the budget slide? How much of that cost savings included one of the ad alternates that we funded, which was the pedestrian crosswalk improvement? We were gonna narrow the road by the public safety center.
I don't
Shape
That include that?
Drive East, that's where they
Yeah.
went.
I don't
Yeah.
remember that.
It's 3 lanes. We were gonna take it down to 2 lanes and increase the sidewalk, increase the landing zone, at the crosswalk, make it flatter, easier for circulating. Okay.
We did get a credit back from the contractor for not doing
Right.
that work,
That's
but I
what I
don't know
think.
what the exact.
I wasn't sure if that was what the cost savings were, or, what else was it?
The next project that we do annually is the community block grant sidewalk work.
Yeah, this is a project that, it's one of the few that the municipality qualifies for grant funding.
Okay,
And each year we coordinate with Public Works to select the locations of where we're gonna do these ramps. We try to stay ahead of the road program mainly, and we get these ramps done, then the road program comes in and the ramps are complete, which ultimately allows you to do more road work instead of having the ramps as part of that.
Moving on to some of the building projects quickly here.
are those putting in ramps where there currently are no ramps? Is that what
Correct.
That is,
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
And are we putting them in at the angle? It looks like from that photo, and I thought the ADA recommendation was to put 2 ramps in so that no one's entering the intersection directly at that angle. Instead of they were crossing at like the crosswalks.
I think the picture's kind of deceiving, but it follows existing conditions on how they make that crossing of that road.
Okay, yeah, in general, do you know if we put the crosswalks, if we put 2 in or 1 at the angle? You know what I'm talking about,
I
Ann?
think a lot of corners, they follow one ramp, that's an acceptable practice for
Just the
the
one.
crossing, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was definitely recommended during Vibrant
The
Uptown, but
real,
that's
the
not.
real issue
best
is
practice.
making sure that the curb and the road come in like this, so you don't have a dip of water and snow that the.
Yeah,
that the wheelchair
yeah,
really
make
hits
sure
in.
the water gets
Yeah.
out around.
That's the real thing.
Yep.
The biggest problem, really.
And PennDOT has different standards for state roads, and
Uh-huh.
that would be what happened in Vibrant Uptown. Plus you're crossing 2 lanes of
Okay.
traffic and you have signals you're
Yeah.
dealing with and other things. The signals have to be aligned with the crosswalks.
Right.
You have a little more, mostly on ADA ramps, it's slopes and
Mhm.
drainage for the
Slopes and
issues.
drainage.
Yeah.
Slopes and drainage.
And the tactical strips that we have to
Yeah.
have there.
Okay,
Just on to the building projects quickly. Big project that was done this year was the rec center roof. Again, there were some improvements to that roof. We got a new roof with a new warranty. We were able to add the white roof, and it has the potential for solar to be installed in the future. Again, this was done on budget with no issues, and we move on.
that one's totally done, is it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great.
The project that we worked on with in-house with Rudy's department, Phil Rolio specifically. We did the women's locker room expansion. We were able to get some contracts out, work with some subs and basically get that project. It's very near completion. On the municipal garages, there's a couple projects always there going on. On the maintenance side of things, we did some maintenance work on the north garage and we coordinated the RFP on the south garage. We're developing the plan now to implement the improvements or the maintenance to the south garage to keep its useful life until such time as that structure may be replaced.
Looks like they're playing deck hockey up there.
Yeah,
It's looking fun.
they probably are.
That'd be a good idea. We gotta close it off one day, have deck hockey.
Another building project was the library solar project. It was the municipality's first significant solar project. This went on without any changes. If we could get the monitor to work up there, which they continue to work on. We haven't finally paid this contractor off till that's fixed, but that's where we are.
Awesome.
Moving on to the Thornwood Stream Restoration Projects, which is environmental one. I'll let Matt talk about that.
Yeah, so in the interest of time, just on the Thornwood Stream Restoration, that was one that was completed earlier this year. It was one where the streams, as you can see, it's a very flashy type flash storm type stream where there's lots of erosion. And really the intent of any stream restoration is to take those erosive forces away from the banks and direct them more toward the center of the stream. So as you can see by these first two slides, these are like the existing conditions where there was erosion along the banks. There was a sanitary sewer that was becoming exposed through the stream. And then in the next photo, what we implemented was things such as the rock cross veins, the log toe, branch layering, laying the slopes back, all with the intent of directing that erosive forces to the stream, so it's better protected for those flash kind of storms moving forward.
Just briefly on asset.
Has the planting been done yet for that?
Yeah, the planting was done at the beginning of this year.
Okay,
With they planted a number of, I mean, it's gonna take a while to
of course, yeah.
grow up, but there's planting along the stream that they call branch layering. It's back into the bank with above the log toe.
Right.
So that'll take root and grow along the stream to help stabilize those banks. And then there was additional planting that was done outside of the actual stream, like in some of those areas adjacent.
Yeah,
to the
next
stream.
time the Parks Board, I know we've talked in the past with the Parks Board, but the Parks Board has done some more research and has some ideas about types of plantings that will work well along streams. And I think some of the current research that they've come up with has said larger, more like shrubs are actually gonna be able to kind of withstand those conditions. But it really depends on like, you know, the light, so many different factors, but Rudy, I think is well aware of some of that information as well, but you could loop them in the next time we do a stream project. They have some good ideas.
I know they've done some work at Bird Park.
Yes, and they're kind of working on improving the plantings and it needs to be
Yeah, I had
fresh.
questions from residents about whether that stuff would grow or not. Their basic comment was everything that was planted was dead, and I was like, relax, it'll come back in, which I'm assuming is true.
It's dormant, and I mean, obviously, when they planted it, it was dormant and it was.
Right.
You
Right.
plant it when it's not growing, but we do have, we have a maintenance bond with all of our contracts, not just this one, but with all contracts. So
Yeah.
before that would expire, we would go out and take another look.
And then just on that, Keith, I think your last name. During that project, a tree fell on that guardrail, which protects people from, driving into the stream. Is that that will be replaced? Is that the last?
We're pursuing it. Rudy reached out to Terry. We're pursuing that with our insurance carrier to get that addressed and replaced.
Cool.
So just wrapping this all up with asset management, we have made some significant improvements to the GIS system this year. Again, working with Mount Lebanon's in-house GIS person in Public Works. All of this work is being documented, tracked, kept for forever and ever. That when we're all not here anymore, people will know what has been done in the community. You can see this year just some of the information that was put into the system and is up in the cloud somewhere that we can find and use. It is very useful. Both Rudy and I can get on the phone with people. If you have a resident call you, if something happens, you can immediately get information. very quickly make answers or determine what problems might have existed and deal with them. So it's a great tool. I think we continue to try to enhance that.
Is there anything we're not doing that we should be doing with the ESRI stuff? Like, we've got access to this data. Is there stuff that we should look at? Like, you know, I'm making this up, but 75 backwater valve inspections, do we plot that in GIS and say like, oh, there's a specific area where all of our backwater valves are? Does that suggest we have a problem in this area? Do we generally?
Oh, we know where the problem is.
Right, so, but that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, like, is there anything that we can do with this data that we're not doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I think that some of the analytics that we have now, most of it's kind of tracking and making sure we're making progress. That's what we kind of use it for now. But I think the analytics related to it, we could use it for other things. We really haven't even touched on that end of it because we're sort of always behind the eight ball, just trying to keep up with just maintaining the infrastructure, given the age of it and how much work has to be done in a given year. Mostly it's important because just record keeping on this stuff is so important to, again, know when you need to come back to certain areas. I mean, that's the benefit, but Craig, your point is well taken. I'll take that up with.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys are on top of this, but and the recommendations we get are always more than we could ever do in any given year, or probably any given period of years. But it's interesting to think like, is there something that we can discern from the data that we should be looking at for a long-term project? Or is there anything that this data will tell us that might help us with some of the other initiatives that we're doing? Is there something we can wrap into some of our mobility studies or complete streets in general? Or how do we look at what we think we might be doing related to sanitary roads or other public assets that will kind of help frame the conversations for those other projects?
Yeah, well, to your point, this is almost, you're getting to the point where it has a practical immediate use right now, but then there's the give it to, a capstone project and say, here's a bunch of data about these things. What is useful about it? How can you use this to glean insight? Who knows where it goes, right? But it's a question of how might we think about this information? Because now we have it. What can you learn from it? It's an interesting dynamic.
I know we're short on time here, but.
Kind of an overtime, so.
Are we? Okay.
Exactly.
Well, I just wanted to, we do recurring projects, obviously, each year. This year's been a real big year related to residential projects, really assisting Rodney with a lot of stuff related to stormwater reviews, a number of walls that are going in. It's amazing what people can do on a small piece of property. And the concern is always how's it gonna affect your neighbor, that's my big concern all the time. So we do help Rodney with those things.
Yeah.
And then just to wrap it up, like the commercial, for Matt and I, we've been here since 2000. We think that we've really developed a lot of good programs here with Rudy's help. We're really on a good path to completing projects. This has been a record year, obviously, in terms of amount of projects that have had to be done or were mandated to be done. We appreciate that. It takes a lot of people to get this all done. What I generally look at is I'm the responsible person here. I have Matt on my right, Josh on my left, and then we bring Mike in on traffic. Ryan on asset management, and then Denny's on sewers, Kevin's on buildings. I mean, it takes a lot, it takes a whole staff of people to do some of the projects that we do each year. And again, I think that we're a good fit for the community because, we do have those services. When you need them, they're there. And we quickly and efficiently try to do things that we can do to, get projects done and get results, so.
Back to the resident side, I just really have appreciated over the years how fast how fast Gateway is with responding to residents. Oftentimes, I won't even know that there was an issue with someone in my ward because you've just handled it and explained it to the residents or resolved the issue, and maybe I'll hear about it after the fact. But I think we need to request.
Well, thank you.
Weekends, whatever. I'm not asking you to do that, but you're doing that.
We know that's our job, and of course, we live in the community and we care about the community too. So.
Right, well, thank you for that presentation, we appreciate it. Nick?
Sorry, I just wanted to.
Next on the list, police cameras, police camera contracts, and I have the rare opportunity of telling the police department to speed up.
2013, we had 7 unique roads failed.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about our body worn camera and our in-car camera program. So I believe all of you have the memo that was circulated.
Yes.
So with that, I'll just kind of encapsulate a little bit in terms of just an overview, and then we'll go into the specific contract we're talking about. So obviously, our in-car camera program is older than our body worn camera program. We've been doing in-car cameras since the early 2000s. Back then, if you'll note, they were very cumbersome. They were VHS cassettes that were placed in recorders and the trunk of the cars. Since that time, that technology has developed to a really seamless cloud-based technology. Whenever the early adopter, we were early adopters of the program, locally and regionally. And I can tell you in our early adoption of it, we developed a pretty solid policy, and we've since revamped that and updated our policy. We did a policy overhaul in 2021, which is compliant with national standards and best practices, as well as it allows us to maintain our accreditation through the in-car camera process. We have a lieutenant assigned that oversees our in-car camera, or the cameras in the vehicle, as well as the fleet maintenance, and we maintain those regularly. They're also supported by our IT department. They play a big part in our installation and support. And those are cloud-based systems. So whenever the officers go out on patrol, their cameras are activated when the lights are activated. And then at that point, they come back and they dump that footage into a cloud-based system, which integrates in with our next, dovetails nice with our next system we're presenting, which is our body worn camera policy or presentation. So body worn cameras are new. I'll tell you that body worn cameras have come a long way in a very short time. We developed our body worn camera policy and we adopted them in 2018. What you'll find with body worn cameras is there's a few vendors out there. Whenever we started to look at different vendors, we looked at compatibility with our in-car system to maintain efficiency as well as lower cost, as well as the integration with our evidence.com system. Evidence.com is the system we utilize to not only process the actual video footage, but it also then gets processed for criminal prosecution, as well as for data storage, for maintenance of our 100-day retention policy. So it is a seamless system. We're presenting the contract to maintain our relationship with Axon. The other systems that exist really wouldn't integrate with one or the other. We would have to do a wholesale transition. And then again, you get into really exorbitant cost. The real significant cost of a lot of these systems is the data storage. We go through a lot of data storage and it really is a sufficient amount. We have spent a lot of time to really make sure that we have enough storage, that we are using it efficiently. So if you look in the contract, it notes that amount of storage that we have. And it is a effective amount. And so what we are presenting here tonight is a 5-year contract to transition all of our fleet, our 13 in-car fleet cameras to Axon Fleet 3s, which is the latest camera that Axon operates. It also does have an ALPR feature. It has an updated camera as well, which is a digital camera, which really is a nice picture, nice footage. The deputy was on with our rep and really saw the footage that it presents, and it really is latest and greatest.
Tell me about the LPR, that's automated, it's in car, obviously.
In-car automated license plate reader.
Yeah.
Now, again, what it does, that doesn't integrate with Vigilant per se, which Vigilant is our current system that
Right.
we utilize for ALPR. However, you can't separate the two. But what we aren't going to do is we aren't going to go down the road. There's another sort of package where you utilize the ALPR from Axon, which we aren't going to purchase.
Okay,
This is just the in-car system. It will retrieve the plates that are seen in front of it, but it doesn't necessarily use the overall system that Axon has developed. We already have that with Vigilant. We don't need to replace that or duplicate that. That would be a duplication of services that we already currently subscribe to. And so really, we're comfortable with Vigilant serving that need for the ALPR function. But you can't separate that out from this camera. This particular Axon Fleet 3 comes with the
Okay.
integrated camera.
So I'm trying to remember when I did the Police Citizens Academy
Yep.
a few years ago, 5 years ago now,
Wow.
there was a lot of effort that had to go into getting the license plate information into the system. Wasn't it like typed in on a separate computer?
For the ALPRs,
No, just right now, when you want to read a license plate, what's the current system without this new technology?
so, well, what happens now is the officers physically will. You mean, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Oh, yeah, when the officer wants to see if a plate's registered, look up a plate.
So what we can do is one of two ways. We can use our Vigilant ALPR system, which we have on 3 of the cameras, and you funded the other 2, which will be our 5 frontline cameras.
Right, we don't
So
have,
that will process and that will come up physically on the
but
MDT.
that's not on every patrol car.
That'll be on 5,
It will,
which are,
but
yeah,
right now it's not.
it's on 3.
Okay.
And so that'll be our frontline patrol cars that will be able to utilize that system. It comes up on the MDT. You see the actual PennDOT data from that plate, or you can physically run it through physically calling that plate in and utilizing our NCIC system and getting that information. So there's a couple of ways to do it.
Uh-huh,
And then the current Vigilant system does integrate with the PennDOT data.
great.
So, yeah, so it's really, it is, ALPR again in the vehicles is something that we use Vigilant for. And then the cameras we use with Axon, is something that it comes with. But there's another level of subscription we are not subscribing to because we already have that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I saw, I think was pre-LPR and you had to
Sure.
manually enter it in and I was
Sure.
surprised about the delay that our officers had to deal with and we weren't able to access that tech, but I'm glad we are now.
Sure, I'm sorry.
I'm glad we are now.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have the tech now to scan the plate.
Yeah, and it's important because what we're finding is with our, I think I mentioned this at a previous presentation, we have a very big software footprint. We're trying to shrink that to make it more efficient for the officers. That's exactly right. As these systems become sort of more redundant, we want to make sure that we're refining those and we're making sure that the officer's jobs become easier and not harder
Right.
with the technology that we have. We don't want them logging in with 4 and 5 passwords. We want them to really go in and have single sign-on and really do latest and greatest that we can develop. So it helps them and then they're more efficient and they're able to do their job better. So we're very mindful of the end user. We get a lot of feedback as we develop these systems and as we adopt them. And I think that we're on the right track, but we've got a ways to go. So,
I would just say I'm impressed that you don't have to put a VCR tape in anymore.
well, again, we can all tell you they've been in the business a while. That was a very cumbersome way to do it. Now some of our young officers don't even know what VCR tapes are.
Or, exactly.
Uh,
So Chief, when is
yeah.
the in-car camera activated? Not the in-car camera, I'm sorry, the body camera. When is that
So-
activated?
That's activated anytime citizen-police interaction occurs where there may be enforcement action by policy. And so what happens is anytime an officer is talking to a citizen, again, on a call, on an incident, traffic stop, whatever, they activate that by hitting a button. Also, with the in-car camera, with the Axon Fleet 3s, currently with the Axon Fleet 2s as well. There's a 15-meter Bluetooth signal that will also activate cameras of backup officers. When you turn on your lights of the in-car system,
Yeah.
because they integrate, they talk to each other. When you show up on a call, everybody that shows up on that call within 15 meters of that signal, their body cameras are automatically activated. And so that's the other thing that we really like about the integrated system. And when you start pulling those apart, you lose that functionality.
Got it.
And so that's something that we're really happy with. And so the body worn cameras have been a really great development in law enforcement. We're big believers in the program. We did develop a model policy along with the Allegheny and the DA's office, Allegheny County District
Yeah.
Attorney's office. We also, again, being early adopters, we're in a position to recommend a lot of changes to the Bureau of Justice Assistance, which we got our initial grant for initial rollout in 2018 with the Department of Justice. And so we helped to develop, there were 75 bullet points that you have to qualify for. And we actually helped to develop that as early adopters of the system. And we continue to be looked at, again, as leaders in the technology usage. And so what we're really happy about is the amount of complaints, citizen officer complaints has gone down. The confidence in our officers to do their job goes up, as well as the trust from the community that our officers are doing the right thing. We continue to use our body worn camera footage on a number of incidents. Again, our use of force is down. Our force, again, is the level of force continues to be reduced. And so that all really is attributed to the use of technology, as well as to people's awareness that that technology exists. That's also on the side of the citizen and people who are not following the law, being compliant. They recognize that being videoed also lowers their sort of intent to do harm. So with that, it helps us out for a number of reasons. So we're big believers in the system, and we appreciate the consideration on the contract. So
Two reasons that I wanted this presentation for commission tonight is.
Yeah.
You will see an agenda item on the December 12th agenda for the approval of these contracts. You'll also note in the chief's memo that there's a cost savings to the municipality.
Yeah.
And actually, we're upgrading from an equipment standpoint. And the second point is that while these are both obviously tools for the police department, they're actually also, I'll say, benefits to the public. Because if there is a question about what transpired during an interaction between an officer and a resident, there's video evidence that's available to either confirm or not confirm somebody's, I'll say, statements about what did actually occur. So
I think to that point, it's helpful to have that information. Obviously, we don't want to disclose if we don't need to or are literally required not to, certain, pieces of information on those tapes. I think it's important to understand how many crimes have these cameras assisted in solving, or how many disputes have they solved with that kind of information. So understanding the impact of the investment is important to understand whether the investment is worth making.
well, and I'll tell you, we'll look at that and we'll get what we can glean from those numbers. I can tell you some of that really won't be a data set, one that it will be just the overall, again, number of complaints, maybe a number of use of force. Last year we had 22 uses of force, and our use of force is defined by anything above and beyond non-compliant handcuffing. None of those resulted in any hospital visits by anybody on either side. In terms of from the officer or the individual being detained. And I can tell you that's a very low number for a department our size at 30,000 calls for service. So for 30,000 calls for service 21 times, they completed a use of force report. So again, that number of interactions, and you really multiply that because most of the interactions involve multiple people. So you can really say that out of those 30,000 calls for service, you're likely dealing with 45 to 50,000 people. 50,000 interactions, at which point 21 times that were used to reported. So I can tell you it's a very low number. Probably, again, we talk about it. We're very amazed by our officer's ability to de-escalate situations verbally. And so those numbers really are indicators that the technology is helping. And so I think that that's one way that we can use it as a metric. As far as the prevention phase, obviously it's a very tough number to, calculate. But from a usage standpoint, I can tell you that along with the citizen officer complaints, really goes down. Again, it's under 10 that we got in the calendar year 2022. And I can tell you the body worn cameras were a big reason for that, where we were able to exonerate officers or say that they affirm the citizen version of events and say that we had learning opportunities for all involved. So
Yeah, I go back to, we're expending taxpayer money. We should be able to let taxpayers understand what that money, the impact of the use of that money. So, things like, how many instances body worn cameras were used, how many instances, whether it's investigation or solving a crime, whatever it is. I may not be using the right terminology. How many times body worn cameras were used, how many times LPR was used in the course of an investigation. We can wrap up that data, right? Like we had 1 million investigations, body worn cameras were used in 100,000 of them. Therefore, body cameras were used in 10% of our investigations. Out of those, we achieved these kinds of results. And we can infer that body worn cameras may have a certain impact that is worth that investment.
And we can put those together for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no problem.
All right, given this is going to be on the agenda on the twelfth, just assuming that, I mean, commission's thoughts on this, if the commission doesn't want to do it, there's no point in putting it on the agenda. So.
I'm not suggesting that those numbers should hold anything up. I'm just saying we should understand them and be able to communicate that kind of information to the public.
Okay. Having said that, 1, 2, 3, okay, so we have 3 votes for that coming up, so, great, thanks for that presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Next on the list, solid waste recycle information, sorry, we're a little behind schedule, but water based solely.
Oh, you know how fast I talk.
That absolute constitute the ninth person.
Thank you for having us. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce Rachel Windsor. She is our new assistant PIO. Many of you met her at the Veterans Day service, so I wanted her to introduce herself and tell you just a little bit about you.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. I have a background in government communications, from Pittsburgh. I live in Upper St. Clair right now and have.
We can fix that.
Okay, so I.
Welcome, welcome,
Yes,
we're
welcome.
super happy to have you. Welcome.
Despite the ribbon you were joking.
We like you.
I'm kind of done for that. It's okay. Just ignore me.
So we wanted to wait to bring you information about the communications plan for the solid waste contract until you've got through your preliminary conversations about funding. I just want to kind of go over what we've done so far and what we plan to do, and then ask you for.
That's
Rob
fair.
said, that's the way. The first thing we did in August was we put up a special webpage at mountlebanon.org/2024 trash, where we detailed the 2 contracts that SHACOG received that you were considering, just for transparency for the public so that they could see what you were looking at. We pushed that out to the public. We encouraged them to come to the meetings where you would be reviewing the bids. We used the videos where staff presented what you were looking at as well, sent LIBO alerts. And that situation was fluid because it was a conversation that was ongoing. After you voted to select the contractor, we updated that page so people would know what they would be getting. Some of the details still needed to be worked out, so we've been updating it ever since as things have clarified. Once we had the new route information, we had our art department in our PIO create this insert that's flown into the magazines in the December issue, which is a month earlier than we normally do. We normally don't do it until January, but because it was a new company, because there were a bunch of changes, we wanted people to have it early. This is also online and it's also available for pickup at the front desk as well. So we expect this to be popular over the next couple of months. I've got to mention Rudy and Mickey. There was a lot of proofreading. Also Tracy and Michelle at our front desk area helped us immensely with going over all of this data. Some streets do have new days. That's part of the reason why we're getting people to read it. Other things that have changed, there's a different way that we're going to be picking up Christmas trees. Instead of the trash company picking them up on Saturdays, Public Works will be picking them up. Just like leaf collection, it'll be 1 day before their regular trash day, the weeks of January 8th and 15th. So we need some time to communicate that to them as well. The return of glass at curbside, and that's a big change. We still are encouraging people to take their glass to the PRC station that we pay for, that we contribute with Dormont and some other communities next to Kohl's, because more of that glass is reclaimed and reused because it's single stream. Michael Brothers as well collect that type of glass. But again, we don't want it to end up in the landfill. So if nothing else, we want them to recycle curbside.
Is that in the handout or does that not make everyone?
That did not make the handout. That is on the webpage because
Okay.
again, this was more just
Pickups.
and plus we were to, if something were to change in the middle of the year, it would be printed and handed out. So the website is a little bit easier to update that. sort of
It's really not that close to Kohl's. It's the liquor store. It's next to.
stuff. Why do you think it's so successful?
Oh, I know. I'm sure that's what it is. I think it's perfect.
We'll bring it it's like the roll yours up. Propane tank. Also the reduction of bulk items from 2 per pickup per week to 1. That's another change for people. We don't think that'll have a big impact. And then finally, the coordination of all Mount Lebanon recycling schedules. It was, if you remember, there was an A week and a B week, and you had to figure
Yeah.
out if you're an A. Everybody's gonna be on the same week from now on, but it doesn't start until the week of January 8th. Because they wanted 1 week to just do the trash, and then they would start the next week. So the good part of that is I can send Lebo alerts, put it on social media everywhere. Hey, this is on the cable TV. This is our recycling week. We're gonna do that for 2 months, so people get in the habit of that.
Right.
The bad news is that means approximately half of the community will have 3 weeks between their pickup, their last pickup in December, and their
Oh.
first pickup in 2024, because we're skipping that first week. So
Maybe we can tell people where to go with their cardboard, but cardboard because of.
But on the plus side, this hauler is not limiting the amount of recycling that residents can put out. So
That's right.
Had we gone the other direction, we would have been limited to 196 gallons.
For sure, for sure.
correct. And the good news is recycling is clean. It doesn't smell. It's not like if they're sitting there with
Yeah.
3 weeks worth of shrimp.
Michael
Brothers tanks of cardboard.
Yeah, Michael's Brothers, yeah, we tell people,
Exactly.
drive it there if you really can't handle it in your.
So after your 11-9 budget meeting, we added the new fees and tax proposals onto the webpage so people would be understanding how they would potentially be paying things. Asked them to come to the hearings and weigh in with you all. Sent Lebo alerts, posted the socials, again, encouraging this engagement so it wouldn't be a surprise to people. We had a magazine story and it was mentioned in the budget podcast that Andrew McCreary did with us. So I just want to rewind it back for people who weren't here 5 years ago when we had our last trash contract. We had a $20,000 education budget. Because if you remember, we were very concerned that we were going to penalty phases in that contract for examination. And that could have potentially cost taxpayers a lot of money. So we put a lot of money aside for that type of education. That contract also glass came out. So we were getting people out of the habits that we had them in. And we were encouraging people to go again to Michael's and to that PRC site outside of the liquor store. And then we noticed that they weren't finding us and that wasn't gonna happen. So we kind of saw that this contract would be a change too. So we kind of sat on those education funds and we used our quote free methods, our website, our magazine. So that money is still kind of sitting there in a carryover. We have $15,390 of that $20,000 that we haven't spent. So I'm gonna ask for that in a budget carryover. It's actually under Rudy's, but I'm asking for it on his behalf.
What was it? What kind of item was it?
Switching back
It's-
to
it's a
carryover, was an
education.
educational piece that we had funded, the commission had funded when we switched the last time because of some of the contract changes.
Yeah, I remember funding glass though specifically, it's not.
That's
just
separate.
for
This is
glass.
education.
That's
That was
separate.
separate, right, and
Education.
this was just education.
Because
Okay.
we didn't know what kind of education we were gonna have to do based on what people were doing wrong. You know, and there was Post-it notes being put on garbage cans, I don't know, so, but as it turned out, it was not good. So this is our plan. In December, I'm gonna move the content over from that special page into the regular pages. We have a garbage page and a recycling page. We'll still have the old schedule on there because it will still apply to some people for, for the remainder of December. We'll have a magazine story in the January, February issue about the contract changes. We'll have a podcast. We did these stickers last time where we blew them into the magazine for people to put on their actual cans in their kitchen because we feel this is helpful to remind them what to put where. Things have changed since then though, because again, we were big on what to recycle, what not to recycle, but we don't want to tell people not to recycle anything. It's just, you just can't place it curbside. So our hope is to have a little asterisk on here, send people to the website where the ESB is going to research places that people can take their other recyclables to be, and that changes, right? So some battery stores collect batteries for recycling. There were some stores that took plastics 3 through 7, and they're gonna be updating that, and that'll be on the website.
Will they identify resources like construction junction and those types of places?
Definitely, I think so, yeah.
Building material.
Yeah.
That I think is useful, especially if you stuck a QR code on something, right? So that people just directly referenced to wherever. I know I've had many people say the new cans in Uptown are very nice, but it's not really clear. There's a lot of wish cycling
Yeah,
going
exactly.
on. Having something where people could see it.
Yep.
Would be helpful. So if there's consistency, right, in that messaging, I think it would be helpful also.
Lebo Green has some people and staff that work in that exact area that have offered to just provide some suggestions.
We'll take it from anywhere. I mean, the main thing is just that it's updated. The old list that we had on the website wasn't updated frequently, and we were getting calls from people who were driving out to places and then finding that they were turned away. We don't have the staff to call on a routine basis. These are volunteers. It's a love of theirs. Let's have them contribute to that. So, we're also talking about posters, a how-to Weibo video, 710. Obviously, this doesn't cost us anything because this is in-house. We thought of doing little bottle openers again, because we're trying to encourage people to use glass over other materials because it is reclaimable. We thought of putting a QR code on here as well, Mount Lebanon logo, and we thought this, people have to change the word they've taken off their wall. That's from my husband's Christmas party, their holiday party, they gave them out, I thought it was a good idea, so. And again, we're gonna be sending those legal alerts out to remind people of the recycling changes. And we're also shifting, the last time we had this Recycle Right campaign to avoid that wish cycling. Now we're moving into a rethink, reduce, reuse, and recycle. And because that has expanded people's practices, we want them to really think about what they're doing before they do it. And then we expect to have a little bit of money of that left over to see where people's questions are, see where the mistakes are happening, and then that gives us more capacity if we need to do more messaging, postcards or something. More signage.
You talked about the R's there. Does that include things like the Goodwill drop-off site? Would that also be
That's
one of the
reuse.
places? I just want to make sure, is that also listed?
All of
as-
it. I mean, starting with rethinking, looking at what you're doing and what you don't need to do. That you're just doing it because it's habitual, but single-use plastics, things like that. You know, maybe have a few minutes of it and wash it.
Right.
Yeah.
Commissioner, have any other questions, comments?
No. All right, good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, and we are really back on schedule.
See?
We're actually a little ahead of schedule. You know, boards and authorities. Anybody have anything?
Marissa,
We approved the budget
we approved the budget, yep. And,
this year.
last meeting was the shortest meeting in the history of Marissa. Thank. It's pretty fast.
It was pretty fast.
The thing that
Not
was
December meeting, so.
Interesting was the number of calls Marissa is answering is now again above what it was last year. Keeps slowly increasing, but not so much that they need more ambulances yet or more people, so.
The general trend or just this time of year trend?
Well, no, it's a general trend, but yes, this time of year, it does definitely go up specifically, but actually overall year to date is higher than it's been. Yeah, pretty amazing. Oh. Yep.
Anybody else?
Yeah, HPB, they met, good meeting, a couple of things, they're doing a bunch of educational events, partnering with the library, partnering with Historical Society. The one that's coming up right now, let's see, look at that, is we have Teresa Duff doing a lecture on December 5th at 7 p.m. That does conflict with our commission budget session, but you all public can go if you're not gonna be at our budget session on Tuesday, December 5th, 7 p.m. Quick description, the field of historic preservation is relatively new to the continuum of architecture and design of our built environment, aims to strike a balance between preserving our past and our future development. By identifying the values of building, a site, or community, we empower our past to better inform our present and thoughtfully shape our future. They're also doing 3 more educational events next year, starting in February. They're all a series. It's a speaker series called This Old Sustainable House.
Nice.
And
You do a great job.
they do a great job, yeah. And then the other big thing that we talked about was the Brick Streets Preservation Policy that was passed and approved by the commission a couple of months ago. They have some suggestions to update it, whether they're gonna get those, they're finalizing those suggestions and gonna get them to us. One of the pieces was around resident communication. That's the only real piece of substance. Some of the rest were more
Yeah.
like kind of
Yeah.
grammar, but the
Right.
communication piece, they did recommend, right now, the policy states that upon, almost upon adoption of the policy, we will notify all individuals that reside on a brick street that is not recommended to be reconstructed as brick when the time comes. And so that would sort of mean if we followed the policy that we already adopted, that we would be identifying residents right now. They didn't think that that really makes sense because this might not happen for 10 years or who knows when it will happen. But instead, they recommend that there's a notification process that happens when the commission is presented with the street list, usually January, February on that annual basis. If a street is on that list that's recommended to be reconstructed in materials other than brick, at that point, there'd be a resident notification process, which is before the contractors are on the street and before it's finally approved, would give maybe 2 to 3 months of time for those residents to come and to express their opinions one way or the other on the matter. But the idea is still that the policy is the policy and the streets that are recommended to be, what we voted on. So I think they're still refining some of those changes and we'll get that in front of the commission at some point. Those are the two big pieces.
PIO was here to hear that, so that's.
Yeah. And
I think I mentioned at the last meeting that the school board had finished up the teacher contract, so that was obviously a big one. There were new elections, so we have new school board members, so the swearing in, I think, is in a couple days.
I was gonna say, is it,
Yeah.
what day is?
Is that the fourth, December 4th?
think so, think Monday,
First
whatever that is,
yeah.
yeah,
It's a couple days, so we'll have a new liaison, we just don't know who that is yet. Yeah.
okay.
Mr. Flynn, anything?
I do not have updates.
Well, all right, okay, well, that wraps up this discussion session. We'll see you next one.
Not putting you a new laptop.
Okay.
Fine.